Welcome back. My name is Adam Stroker, of Cavendish. This is Future Downstream, a fantastic and enthralling morning, talking about all things digital and then talking about all things energy transition. We're now going on to a very exciting session, which is always exciting. I think it's one of the most underappreciated areas in industry is cybersecurity. We sort of I don't think we talk about it enough, and it creates so much damage when it's breached. So we've got some really fantastic experts on this session, and it's moderated by the irrepressible Dr. Chris Cooper, who's the Executive Advisor, Group Digital and Cybersecurity for ADNOC. So over to you, Chris.
Thank you, Adam, and a very good morning, good afternoon to everyone on the call. I do like to make this interactive with the audience. It's going to be a bit of a challenge being a virtual event, but I will do my best, certainly with the great array of presenters we've got on this afternoon. So with that, just a brief background on myself. You've heard my role and function within ADNOC. I've just spent the last year as the CEO of the joint venture, basically building AI solutions for the energy sector. For ADNOC. And again, with that comes in challenges of data and obviously cyber risk. So with that, what I'm going to do is introduce the four people that are taking part in this panel this morning, this afternoon. And I'll tell you, we've got a really good lineup here. So look forward to a very interactive discussion. It may get heated at times, but bear with us and keep smiling and enjoying. So first of all, Mohsin, could you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, Chris. So Mohsin here. I'm basically category manager for BP in digital security. Been with BP for 3 years. Currently managing suppliers and business partners for BP's digital security, working closely with the business, aligning the right setup for these suppliers and to make sure that all our business partners are well versed with the cyber risk and complying with the standards that we have.
Fabulous, thank you. And Shahab, please.
Thank you so much, Christopher. So you're Shahab Ahmed. I'm currently working with Parc Refinery Parco since last good 3 years. Here I'm leading the digitalization department here, and whose main responsibility is to automate and digitalize end-to-end organizational business processes, not only industrial, technological, OT, but IT as well. Here we are working with multiple next generation initiatives like digital twin, RPA, AI-based initiatives to optimize the business process or create more efficiency with respect to the bottom line and top line of the organization. Before that, I was part of PPL, Pakistan Petroleum, where it's a completely upstream organization where I worked for more than 10 years. And it was a place from where I actually started my digitalization journey. Thank you.
Fabulous, thank you, Shahab. And I know we've got a common theme here because you've also spent 3 years at Parco. So, Andrej, over to yourself. Are we talking 3 years you've had there at OMV?
No, a bit more. So, hello everyone. My name is Andrej Rangelov. So, I've been with OMV for roughly 5.5 years now. I'm part of the cybersecurity department, and I'm mainly responsible for performing technical security assessment in the IT and also OT fields. So basically pen testing. So that's my specialization. Yeah, and I've been doing it for over 10 years now. So
Fabulous.
That's in a nutshell.
Great to have you here with us. Brilliant. And finally, last but certainly not least, Dr. Satyam.
Yeah, so like Mohsin and so they are 3 years. No, I'm 3.5. I divided by 2. I'm 1.5 years as the CEO of Reignite Future. Before that, for 10 years as the technology fellow, chief data scientist, and managing director of India operations for especially on digital transformation for Bangalore Center. I spent at Halliburton, and before that in multiple different industries. But I started my journey into data AI in year 1999 when I left academic world as a professor to go to join a technology company called AOL. And I've been being a research fellow for cybersecurity at George Mason University, along with my executive roles as well. And today, been done cybersecurity for various public companies in the DC area. Uh, Besides doing data analytics, digital transformation, I'm credited as the first chief data scientist of the industry, as well as the establishment of the first center for big data, data science, and digital transformation for oil and gas industry.
Fabulous. Thank you, Dr. Satyam. And I'm really pleased you brought that out there, talking about data and AI. You've been involved in that since the 90s. I think people think that data and AI is just something, well, certainly AI is something just new. As I mentioned to Jens earlier, I'm as young as the UAE, which is a few years old now. And trust me, AI has been around longer than I have even. So with that, I mean, one of the challenges that we're all seeing today is that as we're continuing to digitize our environment, with that, we're now gaining access and developing more and more data with more sensors that are getting connected. So I just want to ask the first question. This is around managing security in sandboxes. So when it comes to managing security in sandboxes, in our, I'm going to call it our world of oil and gas, these are not always small data sets. They're generally not small environments, as I say, due to the nature of the size of the data sets that we're playing with, we're working with. So what special processes are you adopting in-house? And what are the learnings that you can perhaps share from that? I'll ask that first of all to Mohsin, if I may.
Okay, Chris. I think for us, that's a really good question because it flows through a number of years of maturity to get quite a bit better at it, right? So I think the main important thing is now that we learn a lot is get the foundation right in sandboxes, in testing and proof of concepts in systems. When we do things, we separate it out from production. That's the really key item. When I say separate it, it's not just network, separate accounts, separate governance, and make sure that everyone declares what they use and what it is using for. So these are like sort of like the really key fundamentals in doing things, in having good cybersecurity, in my view. Secondary should be the system that they use, having the right antivirus or the defenders all in place to monitor. But systems aside, I'm always a true believer in getting the fundamentals right, getting the education right, and everyone is accountable. It's not just a cybersecurity person or team that's responsible for this. We need to make sure that all the other technical guys and even the business owners, the sponsors knows what is the data that they're going to use. Is the data, is data really crucial for the business? Do you need to use crucial data for just testing? These are the really key items to very much be in place before even starting such work within the sandboxes.
Great input, thank you. Yeah, very constructive there. Shahab, what about Parco? Is there anything different they're doing there?
Yeah, well, I would like to add, Chris, what Mohsin actually just mentioned. Very well said by Mohsin, but in addition, we are more focused with incident response plan as well. We are very careful about the advanced threat protection process. So, just to add with this, before joining this organization, I have witnessed two cyber attacks, right? And one was for the enterprise security, another was at the OT security. And the one which I witnessed for enterprise security, it was actually penetrating towards the OT side, right? And at that time, we really realized how much important your instant response plan. It's exactly like that the colonial incident which we witnessed a few years back. Yeah. We are very much concerned with the how our incident management tree is working, how our advanced threat protection systems are working, and how much they are independent of manual intervention, right? We orchestrate them. We are using AI to take decisions, and we developed our own R&D center here in the organization, where we are actually doing R&D and creating certain solutions to actually cater those problems. So this is the brief description which we are doing right now.
That's really interesting, actually, particularly the fact that you're leveraging R&D as well. Not a lot of people actually tend to cover that, so really, really interesting. Yeah, great move. And Andre, for yourselves at OMV.
Yeah, so I have to be honest, I have quite limited visibility into these areas because it's a bit outside of my expertise. But I can tell we definitely run a lot of simulations, which we try to test different incident response strategies. Run also different exercises, especially in OT related stuff, and yeah, it's a good thing. You can basically test different strategies in a risk-free environment. So yeah.
Interesting. I'm sensing a common theme here as well with both IT and now as we move into OT. I'm going to come back to you all and ask you about Edge and what additional challenges that potentially brings. But before I do that, Dr. Satyam, can you share with us any other ideas, principles that you're utilizing?
Now, I think Shahab mentioned one good thing, right? That R&D is important. When you build sandboxes, especially if you think of the different technology that goes into these sandboxes, different set of applications, the software that goes into it, the APIs, the connectivity, all those things have to be really well tested as where are the potential for attacks, right? And if you just believe in a vendor and saying that their systems are secure and you don't do your own due diligence, I'm sure you will find some gaps in that. And as a result, I think doing a R&D exercise is very important. Second is sandboxes, if they are communicating to each other, then it's really very important to monitor the traffic that's going between the sandboxes as well, whether it is maybe we'll talk in the second question whether it is through the edge networks or through some other mechanism, but a real-time monitoring at the right frequency is very, very important. And the third part that I say is for any sandbox, for any system for that matter, we really need to educate people a lot. It's not just what we get as in a office setting saying, "Oh, don't look for these email for phishing and all those kind of things," but even the technicians, the field workers, they need to be educated on the importance of it.
On that point, actually, Dr. Satyam, one of the frustrations I get with a lot of my colleagues is we really do prevent them getting access to a lot of sites. How do you manage that in your environment? Do you just restrict very heavily what people can get access to?
I think in practice, this has been our practice that we restrict people, right? But I think if you look at the evolution of technology, since you were talking earlier about technology, last 10 years we have significant amount of big data technology that has evolved, right? So I think we can actually do, if we build the right governance framework and monitoring framework, we can actually see who's getting what access, right, in real time, and then we should be able to block it, right? And that is the best practice. We
Yeah.
can't just assume it will be physically blocking people is the right way. I think leveraging technology, and then because I think you mentioned earlier we're generating a lot of data. Now what is that data being generated for, right? That means we need to look in that
Yeah.
data as to whether Shahab is going or Mohsin is going or I am going on a system that I'm not supposed to go, correct? That means technology
No,
can give us. This is
absolutely.
what happens if we look at. Since I'm in India, I'll tell you. Like you take out the money from ATM in India, even if it's a US bank. Even before the money comes, we get a message: you are withdrawing 5,000 rupees. Right? Look at the technology. Right? My bank is in Virginia, I'm in India, and you get that the delay is nothing. In fact, we have a delay right now, right? Even for our live session. So technology has to be really leveraged for these kind of things. We can't really do physical block. Physical block hasn't worked in cyber attacks. If you look at it, or if you look at the history of oil and gas, cyber attacks with restrictions, we still got major attacks in the last 5 years also.
No, very fair point. Okay, so maybe thinking about an example, if we're formulating, an incident response plan for CNI sites, how would you go about that? Is there any specific process that you would go through? Any comments from anyone?
I'll just add a little bit because I was part of another company before a couple of years ago as an executive. Of course, I was on the analytics side of business analytics, not at that time cyber analytics. But we, as an executive, you had to go through these things. Uh, get educated. It was also in the internet space. I think they had really uh, taught every executive as to what the incident response action items are, at what point who is responsible for
Yeah,
what part of it, even though you are not the IT, or you are not the CIO, or you are not the CISO, but everybody is responsible for it. And then, of course, if incident happens, getting the right authorities involved as fast as possible is the right way. I'll tell you some other thing that happened in internet space long time. This is 20 plus years when internet companies were evolving. The cybersecurity team used to meet, even though they were competitors for business, but they used to meet to discuss all challenges that everybody is facing, of course, behind the closed door, because it was interest of every company to learn from each other so that they don't get the same kind of attacks,
great. So
which you
thinking,
don't really see in oil and gas.
yeah. So thinking about that, the idea of sharing best practice, I want to come on to how we prioritize awareness and education. I mean, when I look at AI, the reason and how you get the growth and the adoption of AI is through a change in mindset, and that requires a lot of education. Knowledge is power. Now, with that in mind, what actions are each of you taking to build in-house capabilities through education and awareness to mitigate potential attacks through implementing the right frameworks and policies and so on? Maybe I'll pass that one to Andrej first of all.
Yeah, so yeah, definitely education awareness very important. I would say a core part of a successful cybersecurity program nowadays, because still people, employees, they are the first line, let's say, of defense. No matter how advanced your technical your hardware software capabilities are, if there is the human factor is not sufficiently, let's say, trained, it will always introduce potential weaknesses or potential entry points for an attacker. So really, here the key thing I think is the education has to be continuous. So that means you have to educate your user base on a regular basis, because in today's cyber threat landscape, the things are constantly evolving. So always new tools, new techniques come up. So it's really essential that you have to have these regular trainings, so to keep everybody up to date on the latest evolvements in the threat landscape, so that the people can in time recognize when they are being targeted or attacked. Yeah, and I think the third point would be that really it's security is a shared responsibility, and by empowering the people with the knowledge, then you can build a cybersecurity culture that would help strengthen the resilience of your company.
That's good to know. I think you've probably stolen the thunder of everyone else on the call here. You covered a lot of things there. You know, we look at continuing education. I think that's really important. And you mentioned about empowerment as well. Mohsin, with regards to BP, is there anything else that they're doing, anything different, or?
I think the one thing that I would add, I think what Andre said is actually really good. What we want to really build up in terms of maturity is from building this. I mean, it's not just in BP. In my previous roles in cybersecurity, we call it the human firewall. It's quite a. I find that it's a good term because when people being called like that, it feels a bit of an self ownership of defending what is the priority in the business. But more importantly is being realistic of how the attack is. So it comes from maturing in just telling people don't click a phishing link and so forth, up to a point where in recent times we've seen, even if it's not cybersecurity related, we do have big IT disruption. So at the end of the day, cybersecurity is a risk-based activity, right? So it's making people understand, they have to understand what are their risks in the organization. What do they do for the company? What data do they hold? How are they securing the data? Do they understand how data that they are holding or they are producing, developing is going to be bad for the company if it leaks out, and how are people from the outside are trying to get it from them, even up to a point to educate whereby they need to know what is the worst case scenario when there is a big disruption, when something did happen or something does happen, what are they prepared for it? Do they have backup for their data? Do they understand how they can work without the systems that they are using because it is being, it's not online? So these are the things that we feel like, I also feel it brings a lot more maturity in the community moving forward within securing the, in cybersecurity perspective, I have to say.
Wow, honestly, some of the hairs are just standing up at the moment. I'm feeling scared at the threats that we're talking about here. So, Dr. Satyam, from your perspective and your longevity in this industry, anything else that you would suggest that we should be looking at here in terms of prioritizing awareness and education?
Typically, look at hello, hello.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah, sure. We can hear you.
Yeah.
So typically, what we do is traditionally education to all employees in most companies, right? And that is a good practice. But I think what we really need to look, especially when we are talking about companies of oil and gas manufacturing and others, where there is an component that that training has to be really developed and evolved in a different manner, that it is to be contextualized for what organization it is and what different talent pool is actually working in that area. Not I'm not talking about just the cybersecurity folks, the technical engineers that are going on to the field. They need to be actually educated as well, as to saying what are the implications for not following or following the right protocols of cybersecurity governance that has been put in place. Uh, that is important. I think training, usually people stay with the generic aspect of it. The other one, when we are getting new devices, whether it's the edge device, whether it is the IoT device, I'm saying this for many years, will actually listen to oil and gas industry in terms of how to write the data for oil and gas. They will write the data the way they want to write it, and we have to actually use it. We need to really look at under the hood and actually build for those new equipment or building before it implement.
Thank you. I picked up most of that there. I think we had some issues with the connectivity.
Yeah.
Shahab, anything else to add?
Yeah. In addition to what my fellow panelists just mentioned, we are more focused on gamification. After simulation, we move toward gamification. We introduce multiple task-based games for our end users. And one unique thing which we are doing here is strong collaboration with my academia. Yeah. So we are already in collaboration with our suppliers, with our vendors, but I'm doing it with the academia to make a good pool of resources who are educated enough. Instead of I'll hire them and make them educate and train them for 1 good year. Instead of that, we take them in their initial undergrad years, and make them as a fully developed resource by the time they used to graduate. And they are like instantly able to come and work with us. So it is actually a kind of a prototype which we are doing since last 4 or 5 days. And honestly, till date, it is a very 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 unique and successful model for us. Through that, the resource part and the organizational awareness part becomes very easy for me.
Thank you. Really appreciate the input. So just summarizing here, a lot of interesting stuff here. Collaboration you mentioned there, Shahab. I did like the continual education because, again, technology is constantly evolving. The other thing I picked up on is the fact that by educating the populace and bringing them along the journey with us, there's a degree of accountability and ownership that sits with the individuals as well. And I think that's a really important takeaway here. So, right, I'm going to step it up a gear. I said I was going to come back to it and talk about edge, but we all know as we're leveraging IoT and AI, machine learning, then the spotlight really is on infrastructure. So, with that in mind, we all know communication is king. I grew up in the UK, and BT always used to have this thing of it's good to talk, yeah. But as we look at rolling out improved communications, we've gone from analog, to the different Gs, 3G all the way now out, GPRS, 3G, 4G, 5G, 6G eventually, and beyond. I'm quite sure of that. Infrastructure and edge compute and gateways are really starting to proliferate value from Internet of Things, and particularly industrial Internet of Things. What challenges are each of you facing, and how are you overcoming them? And I'm going to come to Mohsin on that, if I may.
I think this is really interesting, this topic, because I mean, put those technology aside. When it comes to every out there, what are the priorities of this technology? It is enablement, and it is for a good cause. But the problem we have is it never started to be in a place where we are secure by design. The development of a technology such as the edge computing and all these IoT systems, it really is to focus on that enablement and provide really good value actually for the user. But the problem is because it's not secure and it's not secure by design, it never catered to such threats that is out there. So realistically, whenever we have such systems to be implemented, we need to really take a step back, not get too excited about what it can do, but to understand what it can be a threat if it is misused or it is being basically if it's being infected or penetrated by the active threats that's out there. And the threats are real, right? I think we're all in the forum. I think all of us in this panel knows we've seen a lot of really bad things that can happen. And the only things that why we don't see it every day in our workplace is because we have things that are secure as best as we can so that the risk is mitigated and we have minimal impact. But I just want to reiterate, it's really technology is very sophisticated, very advanced, but you need to take a step back, have a really simple mindset first to understand and really question ourselves before we even pursue all this. Is it secure? Is it secure by design? And does everyone understand the risk? If anything that goes wrong, what is it connected to? If it's connected to really critical systems, then really assess what are the worst case scenario that can happen to it.
Really good stuff there. Dr. Satyam, anything to add from your side?
Yeah, so certainly a couple of things, right? One, uh, yes, we have best practices when we implement certain edge devices or actually connect to the system. But the challenges comes when you are actually scaling these things. You assume that the blueprint is perfect for a single device or single connection, but the moment you start scaling into diverse areas, let's call it the areas as remote areas, as non-remote areas, the challenges could be very different. And even though devices maybe, you still have to really understand how that will impact when you have hundreds of the same devices and one of them goes for whatever reason, the hardware has gone crazy, or its operating system is going crazy. What happens? What kind of send calculate as the vendor actually done sort of a testing of it, you need to look at it, right? This is in a long time ago. Typically, would have been perfect when you are on one moment you send it to, uh, you don't know what floodgates you have opened, right? So this is something that we need to really think carefully, especially with edge devices which are remote, and when their connectivity is significant to others of the same or the other or related.
Interesting, thank you. Thank you. So policies, processes are very important there. Shahab?
Yeah. So for edge related challenges, first one which we normally face in our type of industry is the data overload. So our edge devices are actually we are using to compute to process the data coming from sensors, and the data which is coming from IoT sensors, they are like in a very bulk quantity, right? So it's very difficult sometimes for us to do the edge based analytics, right? To process the data timely with the keeping in mind the latency and the central dependency. Second is the data prioritization algorithms. Yeah, so it's always need time, experience, and lots of patience to learn and see what are the actionable insights which I can actually extract the data coming from the sensors which I am passing through my edge analytics, and get the resultant which actually I want to take the core business decisions. So these are the core challenges which we are actually facing with respect to edge computing.
Thank you. And then back to collaboration here, Andre. We're all sharing, the best practice of what we're finding in our own environments. Anything else you can add with regards to OMV and what you're doing to manage some of these challenges?
I mean collaboration between IT and OT.
No, I'm talking about the fact that we're all collaborating here. We're sharing information about what we're all doing. With regards to OMV, is there anything else you can share with us in terms of how you're dealing with these challenges of the proliferation of new devices and so on with IoT?
IoT devices, yeah, that's really a challenge to integrate everything. I think there are a lot of reasons behind this lack of interoperability. So I think one of the core reasons might be vendor lock-in, because uh, it is tied to certain types of I don't know, proprietary systems or devices, and there is just kind of reluctance to move to something new, or something other, because if it is working, then yeah, why you should change it. And also that kind of these how would call this standalone, let's say, plans. They're kind of they have their, like, let's say, core objective, and they think on their own. So there's kind of lack of I don't know, coordination between a central, let's say there's a lack of a central coordination. So that's also, I think, a challenge. And also this interoperability, that the lack of, let's say, a common standard also introduces also increases the attack surface from a security standpoint of view. Let's say the more protocols have, the bigger the attack surface. So yeah, so to be honest, I can't say really. I don't have so much deep insight, but yeah, these are one of the challenges. Vendor lock-ins and legacy systems, I would say, are the core challenges. Yeah.
Okay, so it kind of comes back to what I was saying at the beginning. As we're continuing to digitize our environments, there's more and more data being generated. We're having to proliferate and use edge devices and IoT. But remembering that 5G was actually designed for industrial IoT, I have to say, as ADNOC, we're very proud that we're in the process of rolling out the energy industry's largest global private 5G network, 11,000 square kilometers. And inherent within that is the fact that 5G is obviously much more secure as a network as opposed to Wi-Fi. Are any of you also leveraging 5G at this time, or planning to in the short to medium term?
I'm right now. I only do consulting, so I only know one of my clients is working on it. Can't tell right now, but maybe next year I will tell more details about it. So, but very interesting with 5G. The advantage that Shahab was mentioning about that you get a lot of data on the edge devices. Actually, now this is the best time with 5G to take the analytics to the edge as well, and that should really reduce
Absolutely.
the time to respond to challenges, cyber challenges that will be faced in the edge. So I think it's very important that, again, this comes back to your first and the second question, that education. Now you are an expert on 5G, you can talk about it. What about the whole industry, right? When do we
Yeah,
learn,
it's
right?
very true.
We can read about the business articles on 5G, it's such a great thing, but as an engineer, what do I need to prepare, what do I need to know?
And unfortunately, we are in kind of an industry in which taking initiative is always a very heavy task. We are more comfortable to do the tested step instead of taking the lead and take the flag up that we are the pioneers in this. Instead of, we will prefer to stay back, see how once it will get stable, we will adopt it.
But one way
that's
around it is to
that's a
continue the education and bring everyone along that journey.
like
Oh yes.
like you could be doing a session on what are the challenges of fiber with 5G, right? And to the engineers, not executives. Executives, of course, is needed, but engineers, technicians, they have to know this
Yeah.
gap, right? They're doing so fast, and again, as Shah mentioned, data being volume, but data is not volume. Actually, the dimension is also complex, and that part is not really being looked at.
Yeah. Andrej, Mohsin, with regards to OMV and BP, are you leveraging 5G today? Are you planning it in the near to medium term?
Well,
I think we
in the
are
OT,
planning for it.
yeah. So for me, yeah, definitely in the IT domain, we are leveraging it. So as mobile computing, you have tablets you go to which workers use at the oil rigs, so they can basically then send the data to the some cloud for processing. For the OT domain, yeah, I don't have really the insights whether we having some 5G integration. I would assume not. Yeah. So as I said before, there's still a lot of legacy systems and vendor lock-in. But yeah, so in the IT domain, yes,
Okay.
we are leveraging.
And sorry, Mohsin, BP?
Yeah, I think it's always in the plan, but it's just more of the coverage of things, right? I think it's a bit more of I think the key part is about inclusivity of this technology too. So I think this is something that it's going to be some journey, but I personally I do agree in the great things that it can do just because of that capability of data management in 5G technologies. It's just beyond what we could think of even like 10 years ago, right? This is really advanced stuff. But I think
Yeah.
it's more, it's going to come with a lot of engagement with the wider population. I think all these things is always the issue, is always inclusivity. I'm always a believer of, from now on, like whenever we can start earlier, always bring everyone along to the journey, because then if anything that we know there is a risk, it's a shared accountability that we want to have, right? We don't want to be just a technical team knows these things, but it's hard to really get things moving on or fix it or move on better after that when the wider population just don't get it. It's like a crypto thing. Like I mean, if basically if the logic doesn't it's not wider population that could understand it, it's hard to move on. We're just going to be a little bit of a back and forth on how to use technology, right? Like I always think about a blockchain sort of thing. Like only a few people understand blockchain, and let alone whoever that thinks about blockchain only talks about the currency, the cryptocurrency. But at the end of the day, it's a whole huge technology around it, but it's not inclusive. And this is something that we can always get better. Yeah.
Okay, so look, I'm just conscious of the time, so I'm just going to build on that last topic, and I'll keep it short and sweet. What are the crown jewels or nuggets that you can share on how we can protect our downstream assets? As we look at further digitizing and connecting them through convergence of IT and OT. Anyone want to go first?
I can
Satya,
start on
maybe?
Yeah, I would say.
Oh, sorry.
I would say the collaboration is important between the IT and the OT teams. So, because I can clearly sense there are some deficiencies here. For example, with the IT people, we have daily meetings, in the office. We know pretty much everyone knows everyone, but I have no idea about the OT guys, who is in the Burghausen plant, who is in the Schwechat refinery. I have absolutely no idea. So, and even these different OT guys, I think they don't know each other. So clearly, this is kind of a silo in between the OT world and the IT world, and I think this is the biggest, challenge here. So I would say to increase collaboration between the IT and OT domains.
Brilliant. I want to make sure that I wrap up here. Anyone else got any comments to add to that?
So
I think just a quick one for me. I think for convergence.
Yeah, please, Mohsin, go ahead.
Just a quick one. I think this for convergence, I think it's a lot of important item in terms of assessing your network and the risk between the sort of crown jewels and so forth. And I would also think, say from experience, sometimes if it's not needed to be connected, don't connect at all. I've seen laboratory systems that is very proprietary and only used within the refinery, doesn't need to be transferred outside the data. Sometimes we see people trying to connect it out, having the latest OS, have antivirus or network security around it. But you think about it, it costs so much money in the first place to do that, and you actually expose the risk for no reason. So in terms of certain systems, you don't need to connect it, leave it isolated, manage it on site. So that's what I would say.
That's a great one. Okay. Shahab.
Yeah. So most important thing for us is the unified governance of IT and OT. These two streams should operate under the same umbrella. Technically, probably yes, for sure they are different, but how they are operating, they should be according to protocol at the same layer. Their patch management should be transparent for both layers. Their protocol management should be transparent, and that's the reason we actually incorporated all our OT side, the SCADA, the gantry, the tellers, the everything which is related to oil movement into a centralized data bank of IT. Yeah, and through that we
Yeah.
are doing all kind of analytics. So it is very important if we will bring both system under the same governance policy with obviously micro-segmented network with zero trust architecture with proper ACLs, everything in place. But the centralized unified governance policy is the key.
Okay, wonderful. Look, we're out of time, okay? But as I've got the lead at the moment, I just want to ask one other question, okay? You can do it as a show of hands, but do all of you run hackathons inside your own organizations to try and find where weaknesses are? Show of hands. Ah, that's good news. That's good news. So listen, thanks very much all. Greatly appreciated. A lot of very good insights and information there. Again, thank you for the collaboration. Thank you for being transparent. And I have to say, some key things that came out there: ownership, accountability, only connect what you need to connect. It is about a change in mindset, and the best way of doing that is through regular and ongoing educations. So once again, thank you very much for your insights. I hope the audience found some useful nuggets there, and all the best to you. And I hope none of you suffer with any cyber attacks going forwards.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Have a nice
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Pat. Chris, you just took all my key takeaways. I had them listed here, and you've taken pretty much every single one. I was going to take the Saiyed's one as well, which is really good. It was a brilliant panel. I knew it was going to be a brilliant panel because I'm always quite interested with cybersecurity. Really interesting. What Chris probably didn't mention, I'm trying to look at my notes and see which ones he didn't say, so I can talk about. Yeah, I mean, collaboration. I think the constant education one is very interesting. I know a lot of people in industry that are doing different things for that, whether it's regular phishing emails, training. Hackathons is a really good thing. I never heard of that actually, about the hackathon, so that's really good to see as well. I think one thing you've got to probably understand is now we talk about AI and the opportunity of AI, but obviously I mentioned it before about the threat of AI. So I think the AI will represent a far greater threat to cybersecurity than anything else because of the way in which it can mirror behavior within a company. And I think that's something which is really scary actually. And I'm sure that's something that's going to be talked about in many months gone by. Yeah, I mean, the unified governance, I think the IT and OT convergence is an interesting one and getting that sort of governed correctly. But I also think it's when you talk about oil and gas, you talk about field operations, devices that are susceptible to being hacked. And I think that represents a key challenge for a lot of the industry as well. So yeah, really good session, really enjoyed it. Chris, brilliantly moderated. Thanks to Satyam, Andrej, Syed on this session in particular as well, and Shahab.